Okay, yesterday went okay. Not perfect, but we're going to work on this again today. I'm going to do 4 examples. When you think you're ready to work, you can go do the 4 problems in the back. So, when I solve an equation, we want to know how many answers. So there'd be 3, because we have x to the 3rd power here today. Now, I've also got other x's that are not to the 3rd power, so we have to make sure the equation's set, which they are. Okay. And now I put a 1 and underline my terms. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 terms now. That's the most you'll ever get. So 4 terms is the grouping and then the difference of perfect squares. Now one thing on this sheet I want you to do, I want this line here, but on that line you're going to make a parentheses, okay? And that parentheses, draw kind of an arrow right there so you remember what goes there. So I make my grouping box just like yesterday. It has to be pretty big, good size. And then I make a dots box, difference of perfect squares. Okay, so grouping, parentheses plus parentheses, then line parentheses plus line parentheses, then a line with a parentheses. But on this line, we're going to make it a lot bigger and put another parentheses. Okay, so remember, whatever's in these parentheses goes there. Okay, and then the dots is easy. It's just 2 parentheses with a plus and a minus. So grouping, we got 1x to the 3rd minus 3x to the 2nd. And we have negative 64x plus 192. Okay. Now, when I'm figuring out what to divide by, there's 3 things we check for. We check for negative, we check for x, and then we find the actual GCF. Okay, so negative. My first number here is not negative, so I don't put negative here. It's negative here, so I go negative, negative. Okay. Now for x, both of these have x's, so I take the smaller power to the 2nd, though. Both of these do not have x's. 192 doesn't, so I don't put x there. Then I GCF the numbers, okay? 1 and 3. GCF's going to be 1, okay? So I'm going to put a 1 with my x to the 2nd. Okay, then 64 and 192. Okay, it says GCF 64, so I put a 64 with my negative. Okay, now, whatever I'm dividing by here, okay, 1x to the 2nd, we pull out right there. Whatever I'm dividing by here, negative 64, I put right there. Now I just have to divide. 1 divided by 1 is 1. And then 3 minus 2 is 1, so x to the 1st power. And then I take negative 3 divided by 1, which is negative 3, so minus 3. And then the x's here cross out. Okay. Now I divide negative 64 by negative 64. I divide the big numbers. I got 1, but then the x just slides down onto that 1. And then positive 192 divided by negative 64 is negative 3. Okay, now get rid of your first power. Now the parentheses are exactly the same, okay? So whatever's in each parentheses drops down into here. So 1x minus 3. Now after that's dropped down, we want to cross out those parentheses because that's been factored out. And then I have 1x to the 2nd and negative 64. Okay, now the 1x minus 3, the one on the left, okay, just drops down. So 1x minus 3. That's going to be my F1. Now the dots part, okay? So remember how we check for difference of perfect squares. Do we have x to the 2nd? Yes. So x. Is our second number negative? Yup, 64 is negative. So So I turn this paper over and see what 1 and 64 are. 1 is 1, 1. And 64 is here, that's 8 and 8. Okay, so equals 0 at the end, and I've got F2 and F3. Okay, so 1x minus 3 could equal 0. 1x plus 8 could equal 0. Or 1x minus 8 could equal 0. Then we dot our x's, circle them, and then it's pretty easy from there. We plus 3, 0 plus 3 is 3, and if I divide by 1, it keeps it at 3. I minus 8, so I have 0, minus 8, that's negative 8. When you add or subtract, it doesn't stay at 0. Then we divide by 1. Negative 8 divided by 1 is negative 8. And then plus 8, 0 plus 8 is 8. 1 times x is 8. Divide by 1 keeps us at 8. So those are the 3 answers for the x. Okay, next one, I have x to the third power plus 2x to the second power minus 49x minus 98 equals 0. So there are 3 answers. And we also have these other x's in the problem that are not to the third power, okay? So I have to make sure we're set so I can draw the boxes. We are at 0, so set, put the 1, and we have 4 terms. Okay, so again, the way to set up 4 terms to be factored is the grouping and then the dots. So big box for grouping, and then a smaller box for the dots. Dots is easy, okay? You're going to set up 2 parentheses with a plus and a minus, okay? So for grouping, again, we know what to do. Parentheses plus parentheses, and then the same thing but with little lines outside. And then a larger line with a parentheses. And actually on that larger line, I'm going to put a parentheses and I'm going to put an arrow right there. Okay. So when I group 1x to the third with plus 2x to the second. Then I group negative 49x with minus 98. Okay, remember to make that a negative 49. Because we put the plus there, so if that term there is minus, it's got to be negative. Okay, so I check for 3 things: the negative, the x, and then the GCF. So negative, my first number is not negative here, but it is here, so I need negative, negative. X, I have x on both of these. The second power is the smallest one. And I don't have x on these. 98 doesn't have it. Now I go to my GCF. Okay, so 1 and 2, the GCF's 1. Then 49 and 98. Good thing I got this calculator. That would be tough to figure out. Okay, 49's the GCF. So again, if you forget what to put here, when you're lost here, what are you dividing by? 1x second. That's going to go out into the space. And then here, negative 49 goes out into the space. So now I divide. 1 divided by 1 is 1. Then on the x, I take 3 minus 2 is 1, so x to the first. Don't have that first there, though. And then positive 2 divided by positive 1 is positive 2. And then those can cancel, because 2 minus 2 would make 0. Now, negative 49 divided by negative 49. Whoops. Is 1. Put the x alongside the 1. And then I divide negative 98 by negative 49, and that's 2. So it's positive 2, so I put plus 2. Okay, now here in this parentheses, the parentheses match. So I put 1x plus 2 right there. And when I put that there, we want to cross these out. And then I have 1x to the second minus 49. Now this one here, we want to drop down. Okay, so I don't look for the dots with the wrong one. Okay, so whatever's in the parentheses goes in your left one, and then whatever's outside those parentheses goes here. Okay, so x to the seconds there. My second number's negative, and then I flip that paper over and see what 1 and 49. 1 would be 1, 1. And 49 is a perfect square because I can write that as 7 times 7. Okay, and these are the three factors. So F1, F2, F3. Okay, so 1x plus 2 could equal 0. 1x plus 7 could equal 0. 1x minus 7 could equal 0. Dot your x's, circle them. Minus 2. 0 take away 2 is negative 2. And then when I divide by 1, it stays at negative 2. Plus 7, I would minus 7. Now, if 0 minus 2 is negative 2, 0 minus 7 is negative 7. And then I divide by 1, and negative 7 divided by 1 is negative 7. Then I plus 7. 0 plus 7 is 7. Divide by 1, and 7 divided by 1 is 7. Okay, next problem. Again, there's 3 answers. Got these other x's that are not to the third power, so we need to make sure it's set, which it is. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 terms. So the big grouping box. And then the dots box, the difference of perfect squares. Okay, so dot grouping, parentheses plus parentheses, then the lines outside, then a big line with a big parentheses, and on this line I put a parentheses, and I know that's coming from whatever's in the parentheses up here. Okay, so I have 1x to the third plus 5x to the second, and then negative 4x minus 20. Okay, remember when we're looking what to divide by, it's just like how you do the GCF. You check for negative, you check for x, and you check for the GCF itself. So that is not negative, so no negatives under the lines here. This is negative, so I put negative, negative. And then x. Well, they both have x's here, so I go x to the second, because that's your smaller power, and then no x's can be put here because that 20 doesn't have an x. Then I GCF. 1 and 5 is 1. Then 4 and 20, the highest number we can divide 4 and 20 by evenly, that's what a GCF is 4. Okay, so 1x to the second and negative 4 are my divisors. They come out here. 1x second, negative 4. So I divide 1 by 1 is 1, and then 3 minus 2 is 1, and then 5 divided by 1 is 5, and then these cancel out because they both have the second power. Negative 4 divided by negative 4 is 1 with x, and we need to be dividing negative 20 by negative 4, and it's positive 5, so plus 5. Okay, so the parentheses match as well as I get rid of that first power. So in this parentheses, I just write down 1x plus 5. Cross those out then, and we have x to the second, negative 4. So I write minus 4, write a subtraction sign. Okay, now again, this just drops down. The one on the left will just drop down. This is where we check for our dots, that one on the right, okay? X to the seconds there. 1's a perfect square because that would be 1 times 1. And then 4 is a perfect square. That would be 2 times 2. Okay? So F1, F2, F3. So 1x plus 5 could equal 0. 1x plus 2 equals 0. 1x minus 2 is 0. So dot your x's and circle them. So subtract 5. 0, that's going to be negative 5. Then divide by 1 keeps the answer at negative 5. Okay. Minus 2. 0 minus 2 is negative 2. Then dividing by 1 keeps the answer at negative 2. Plus 2, that's 2. And dividing by 1 keeps the answer at 2. So there's your 3 answers. Okay, now the final problem. We have 3 answers because of the third power. We've also got these other x's not to the third power, so we need to set the equation. So set, it is. So I put a 1 here, and there's 4 terms, okay? So again, 4 terms is the big grouping box. And then finally a space with a parentheses. And remember, we're going to put a parentheses from whatever's in these two. Okay, these should match. And then the dots box. Okay, so I drop 1x to the third with plus 2x to the second, and then negative 81x minus 162. Now I'm looking for greatest common factors, but only not all 4 of them, 2 of them at a time. So again, negative x and the actual GCF itself. Here I don't have a negative, here I do in front. X, got it here, so x to the second, because that's your smaller power, but no x here. GCF 1 and 2 is 1, okay? Whenever 1's one of the numbers, it's going to be 1. And then 81 and 162. And I got 81 as my GCF, so negative 81. So here I'm dividing by 1x second, here by negative 81. So 1x second goes out, and negative 81 goes out. It's like I'm unmultiplying it. 1 divided by 1 is 1, and 3 minus 2 is 1, x to the first. Positive 2 divided by positive 1 is positive 2, and then 2 minus 2 cancels out. Get rid of your first power. Negative 81 divided by negative 81 is 1 with x. And then negative 162 divided by negative 81 is 2, so positive 2. So the parentheses match, and I put my 1x plus 2 in that parentheses. And I have 1x to the second and negative 81, so minus 81. So we drop him down. And now I check this for the dots. That's where the x to the second's at. So x, second number's negative, and then 1, 1, 1. And 81, 9, and 9. So F1, F2, F3. So 1x plus 2 could equal 0. 1x plus 9 could equal 0. 1x minus 9 equals 0. So I dot my x. Minus 2. That takes us to negative 2. Then divide by 1, and that's negative 2. Minus 9. That's negative 9. Divided by 1 keeps us at negative 9. Plus 9. 0 plus 9 is 9. Divide by 1. And 9 divided by 1 is 9.